This is a project by Daniela DePaulis, and many of you are probably already familiar with a sign in space. There was a signal received by a radio telescope that was broadcast from a European satellite a couple of weeks ago now. Irena, is that correct?
Yeah.
And there's been a group of people around the world interpreting this signal on Discord. And we've been following this. I think none of us, there's probably some people in the group here who are capable of decoding these signals at a scientific level. But I think we're still at a point where the interpretation stage is kind of up in the air. There's been a process of decoding. Some symbols have been interpreted in terms of what symbols we might represent. There's been some visualizations on the various channels, and there's been teams of experts around the world who are trying to look at these, at this phenomena, at these signals from different disciplinary perspectives. So I know that there's been philosophers looking at it, and different kinds of scientists looking at it. And I believe there were some poets who are making poetic responses to it. And just to give everyone a little bit of a sense of where we're coming from, we're all in a field called electronic literature. And this is essentially forms of literature that use computation and use the network context to try to produce forms of storytelling and forms of poetics that are sort of unique to those contexts, and that use the capabilities of the computer and the kinds of communications that we can have together on networks to tell new kinds of stories. So the sort of supposition of this workshop, or what we're trying to do, is generate some ideas of how we could respond creatively using computation and using multimedia and using collective writing practices to communicate with the extraterrestrials who have sent this message without knowing, with only having the information that we have about them now, which is not a ton to work with. But we've gathered together some artists here, and Joe Tabbi is my co-host. You want to say hi, Joe? Joe Tabbi is a scholar. Hello,
everybody.
Several of us here who are sort of organizing the workshop are at the Center for Digital Narrative at the University of Bergen, and this is a new research center that's focused on how different kinds of algorithmic narrativity are affecting our society, including a number of different sorts of artists. And we have Jason Nelson, who's also here in Norway with us. Hi, Jason. We have Natalia Fedorova, who's originally from Russia, but who has moved to France in the recent period as a result of the conflict, the war in Ukraine, refugee from that situation. And we also have Rob Wittig.
Hi, everyone.
Who is joining us from Duluth. And everyone, and I see that there's a number of other electronic literature authors and artists in our group here, Mark Marino and Alan Bigelow, and a number of other people who work with forms of digital narrative. So what we're hoping to do during this workshop is to sort of engage everyone in this process of thinking how we could respond through these media. And then we have a planned collective activity called the Netprov that Rob Wittig and Mark Marino are the masterminds of this form of collective storytelling, and I'll explain that a little later. But I'd like to start perhaps with Natalia and Jason, and just saying, you guys have both dug into these signals and dug into the Discord. and have tried to think about how you would respond in your practice of digital poetics to these signals. Can you say a bit?
Natalia, why don't you go first?
All right. So as I was looking at the signal, I was thinking of other signals that has been there in space, and of the connection that me as an artist and as a person who has a family history connected with the space exploration. So my grandfather was a rocket scientist, and he was one of those people who were preparing Buran, if you know, the spacecraft for the launch. So the stories of space, the stories of launching things in space were part of the family history since I was a tiny little child. So I just wanted to go over the signals that, so what I understand in this project is that it is the signal that, as Scott has said, that has been sent from ExoMars Trace Gas Orbiter, and it was successfully received. So it means that we can receive a signal from space. But as far as I understood from the discussion of the project, here the question is that we can receive the sign, but we need to understand that we have received the sign. We need to try and think how we can possibly decipher the sign, and what does it mean to make a sign and to read a sign. So there is a quite various history of misinterpretations of science. So probably most of you know the story of the War of the Worlds that was staged by Mercury Theatre of Orson Welles, that was received as an invasion of Martians in New York City. I cannot prove how much panic was there, but there was some, as you can see from the newspapers. So there are these famous signals that were sent to the space, and as we were discussing with Jason on the possibilities of working with signal, so it might be that this signal that we are looking at now is a response to, is modeled as a response of extraterrestrial to maybe this, which is a human body DNA sequence, which was sent in 1974, or maybe that one that was 1972, which is also a human body solar system. There was other story about the radio message being in space, which was like, when you think of a radio message, you think of it as a true message. And this communication between Sergei Korolev, the founding father of the Soviet space science, and Yuri Gagarin, one of the first living creatures, but the first human that was in the orbit of the Earth. So this dialogue, this communication, it was supposed to be broadcast all over the Soviet Union, but it is very famous that Korolev is not saying a word of truth in this signal. So he giving Gagarin the coordinates, and these are not the correct coordinates. And well, this conversation has been discussed a lot in the study of the history of space.
Natalia, I don't mean to interrupt you, but your slides aren't advancing. Thank you for the historical perspective. Actually, I had no idea about your family connection, and that's fascinating.
Yeah, that's why I agreed to be part of this, because I kind of felt that I was always a part of this.
After Natalia, I'll be speaking, and we are going to be seeking contributions from everybody who's here, as well as other people. And so once we're done talking, I'm actually going to put a description into the chat, and includes actually an email address that we've created for some of these submissions. So it's sort of multiple things happening at once in our group that we'll be exploring. And we're kind of excited about getting all of you involved, and including other people as well. Yeah, so have you been able to figure that out, or would you like me to go ahead and then maybe come back to you?
I'll just share the link to the video project that I did, which was connected with the Korolev and Gagarin communication, and that was some kind of embodiment of the message. So here is the prompt that I wanted to start us off with, as we ask you to generate some content for the interactive map that Jason and I are hoping to put together. So first of all, I don't know, Scott, do you think I have time to kind of read this, or should I just?
Yeah, go ahead.
I would like to hear this in particular. Yeah.
Okay, so as you know, the project Sign in Space takes its name from Cosmocomics that was written by Italo Calvino and was published in Italian in 1965. And if you understand the chronology of exploration of space, 1961, Gagarin is in space, right? So this is the moment when the mid-60s, beginning of the 60s, when very many people are thinking about the science in space. So I wanted us to, there is that, but then there is a very interesting context of semiotics, which allows us to think of the sign as a bodily gesture, a science as a sound. A science is something that precedes the form, but can also be following the form. The story of Sign in Space is kind of an instruction of what can be done with the science. So first created, and here you can read the description of the sign. Then the sign is erased. Then the sign is changed, then the original sign reemerges. And then in the end, there are so many signs that the author of the first sign doesn't even know where his sign is. So what I want to focus on here is that this story tells us about the first sign and how the sign is connected with the person who created it and how it is able to mark a certain place in space. So shall we try to very quickly read this aloud? I want someone to volunteer and read this aloud for me. Okay, no volunteer.
You want me to do it? I can do it.
Yeah,
So the situation was this. The sign served to mark a place, but at the same time, it meant that in that place, there was a sign. Something far more important, because there were plenty of spaces, but there was only one sign. And also at the same time, that sign was mine, the sign of me, because it was the only sign I had ever made. And I was the only one who had ever made signs. It was like a name, the name of that point, and also my name that I had signed on the spot. In short, it was the only name available for everything that required a name.
Thank you. So what I wanted you to you, the participants, and you, the colleagues, to think about the sign, which can be a name, the sign which can be some attribute of you, and the sign which is also a part of the space. So I think here.
Natalia, I think we've had an odd little glitch in the sound.
Okay.
There we go.
Let me just repeat what I was saying. So this.
I think our signal is getting interrupted by another signal.
Which is really strange, yeah.
I know, yeah.
And it's always as soon as we begin discussing the sign that we lose Natalia's discussion of the sign.
As a refugee, I'm supposed to have a very bad connection, so that's what I'm having.
Well, can I suggest, Natalia, that maybe I think we want to gather these things for the project that you want to help everyone to put together with Jason.
Yep.
And maybe people could email you whatever representation of a sign
Yeah.
They want to assign that might be a response to the sign that we've been sent.
Yep.
Yeah,
So
and I also thought that that sign should have some kind of spatial coordinate to it. And there, I'm handing it over to Jason.
okay. Hey. Hi, everybody. I'm Jason Nelson, a professor here at the University of Bergen, and a digital artist, digital writer, and also in the upcoming Center for Digital Narrative. And so I just quickly, let me tell you what one of our longer term goals is with this, because we have a short period of time today. And so what we want to do is we make interactive narratives. So we turn things like game engines. In this case, it'll be an interactive map. We turn all sorts of different computing devices. I was saying earlier, I have my tiny little projectors here that are battery operated right next to me that I use for different projects. We turn these things into narratives. We turn them into interactive writing. And I know everyone has a different perspective on these things. Natalia's offered a very poetic and beautiful and interesting perspective on the idea of the signal itself, or the idea of signals. Personally, as a digital writer myself, I'm very interested in sort of the impacts of such a thing. And so I'm just going to take you through one of the sort of elements that we thought that you all might be able to contribute to. Okay, so in the chat, which is my direction this way, I'm going to paste something in the chat. It sort of gives you a short description of some of the stuff that I was thinking about you're collecting, and of course Natalia has already talked about some of the stuff that she thought that you could also collect. The critical information in this chat is going to be the email address. And so this is the email address you can use to send us this stuff. And now what will happen with this stuff is what I'll describe in a second. So this is a rather long thing, but I'll just paste it in. The email address is toward the end. The email address, so you can see it there, is just, it's SETI digital narrative @gmail.com. Okay, so this is it. But okay, so here's my thought on what you can do with your responses to this. I'm very interested in how these kind of signals impacts you on a very local, specific, very personal level. So we all know about these big global impacts. We all think about, oh, this is impacting society and religion and all these different global elements. I'm very interested in how does this impact you on a very personal level? And so what I want you to do is I want you to take a picture or a couple pictures of objects. And I mean objects that are personal to you. So for me, for example, right now, I have an old clock, right? So I would take a picture of that clock. And then what I want you to do is over the top of that clock, I want you to write something. And what I want you to write is I want you to write about how such a signal, how this kind of proof that there is some other existence out there that is actually sending a message that we're receiving, how the proof of that changes your relationship or your understanding of that object. And I want you to think as poetically or as story-driven as you would like. So I'm just going to give you a couple examples that I thought about, for example. One of them might be, let's say you took a picture of the soles of your shoe, right? Personally, first thing I would want to do is walk as far as I could to an area without any light pollution and look at the sky. And I imagine my shoes would start to wear. The soles of my shoe would start to weather away quite quickly because I would constantly be wanting to just look up in an area where I don't have, city light pollution, for example. And that's a story. It's a story that's represented in a visual element, right? It's the soles of your shoes have been degraded because of this situation. And so I just want you to think about, what kind of objects, what kind of situations in your own personal life, using the term intimate, in a very sort of very specific, concrete sort of way. So you take a picture of an object, and then you write on top of the object, literally on top of the image that you take, the photograph on your phone or what have you. You write on there how your understanding or your relationship, your connection to that object has changed. Okay. And then once we have those, what we want you to also do is include some sort of location data. Now, that could be where you live, just in terms of textual. It could be where you are in the universe. It could be a universal coordinate, or it could be a GPS coordinate. And then from that, we're going to put this onto and I'll just share my screen just very quickly. We're going to put this onto a map. Now, this is not necessarily the map. Probably the map we're going to use is something along the lines of this, which is just a JavaScript library for interactive maps that you can see just in this little example here. We'll have individual points, and then off of those individual points will come these little narratives that you have created. More of an interesting one might be something like this. This is probably more visually interesting, where you have a little place that comes up here and another place. And that at least has a bit more dynamic. So we'll work out the particulars of what the interactive map will look like. But we'll basically be pasting this into a large scale interactive, basically an interactive map, or in our case, the way we think about it is an interactive interface. Let me stop.
Jason, did you,
Yeah.
quick question. So people paste the picture, the photograph. Is there also a line or two of text, or are we just looking for the image?
Well, we're looking for images that have the text on top of them. So literally what we're doing is we're saying that, you take your photo, and then we don't have time to go over how to do this here, but there's lots of different tools you can use to put text on top of the image. The easiest way of thinking about it is like a meme, right? We all know about this idea of memes. And so we're talking about images with text on top of them. And then a GPS coordinate of some kind.
Excellent. Well,
Yeah.
and I think this is, I think Irina can probably also share this on the workshop page. And then eventually what we'd like to do, I know that that Danielle is thinking about a kind of online exhibition of things emerging from this workshop. So we'll eventually have this as well on the Assign in Space website. So everyone in the back of your minds, and maybe after we get off this call, or if you want to do it right now, that's cool too. But begin to think about that object, that sign that you'd like to share and have visualized on this map. And maybe once we're able to communicate with the extraterrestrial life form, they might encounter that. Let's move on. Thanks, Natalia and Jason. Really great ideas, and I think that'll be a fun project coming out of this. Let's turn now, though, to Duluth, Minnesota, where Rob Wittig, the Netprov artist and the recent author of a book called Netprov, which has a subtitle that I can't remember, will begin to give us an introduction to the next part of our workshop, which will be an interactive writing activity that we can all jump right into and play together, kind of simulating different ways that people around the world, in this case, fictional characters, might respond to this sign in space.
Great. Thank you, Scott. And thank you, Natalia and Jason. Yes, I am speaking to you from land that was cared for and called home by the Ojibwe people, and before them, the Dakota and Northern Cheyenne people, and before them, other native peoples from time immemorial, and it's now called Northern Minnesota. Before we jump into being creative writers, because you all already are creative writers, whether you know it or not, I want to invite you to do with me a professional creative writing warm-up exercise, which is called octopus hands. It goes like this, and it looks awesome on Zoom. So if you got your cameras on, so you spreading your fingers, putting your fingertips together, those hardworking wrists. This is a carpal tunnel prevention. There we go. And again, if this is offensive to anybody in your culture, let me know and we can do something else. But that's octopus hands. That's a kind of a requirement for contemporary writing, as far as I can see. I am going to share my screen if I can. Let's see. Does that work?
Yes, it does.
Okay. And does this work? You see the second slide? Okay, perfect.
Yes, I do.
So as we probably all know, improvised theater has a nickname of improv. Improv is people standing on stage and improvising fiction before your very eyes in real time. This has an amazing tradition that we know mostly in the European tradition as commedia dell'arte, but it is in fact the only theater form, creative form, that goes directly in an uninterrupted chain back to ancient Greece and Rome. It is stock characters, the greedy miser, the boasting military man, that are kind of universal characters of society. And those plays were improvised, and they often were able to be a source of satire and kind of medicine for social problems. So Netprov is internet improv. Also could be called that. Here's another term that people have used to define it. This is my current kind of academic formulation of it. But the important thing to know is that Netprov is something that I'm very confident that you all already do. Examples would be if you have a text message chain with friends and family in which you kind of exaggerate your own personality and have running gags, running jokes among groups of friends. That is, oh, great. We've got some participation here on the screen. That is a wonderful example of Netprov and that creative impulse that kids do it all the time, make believe, and it's a wonderful thing. So an example would be this, one of my favorite Twitter accounts of all time, The Surface of Mars. And this was from right after the landing of one of NASA's rovers. And it reads from the bottom up, reverse chronological order. So The Surface of Mars just tweeted, "Whoa, what the hell just happened? Do I have something on me? I've got this little itch." Actually, it's 6 little itches. And so it's and I just thought that was brilliant. This is this way everybody can recognize it. It's a part of human creativity to do that. And essentially what Netprov does, what I do along with my writing partner, Mark Marino, who is here with us, a brilliant writer from Los Angeles, we ask the question, how good can this get? It's something that everybody does. It's digital media are perfect for this kind of collaboration at a distance. But how good can we get? So here again, I love the fact that the Curiosity rover speaks in a human voice and kind of updates people, and people don't think that's strange, and people recognize that as a fictional strategy that works in real life. Another example of Netprov is one of the earliest of Martin Scorsese's films, the film Goncharov, which does not exist. It started off as just a joke in social media, and then people started elaborating, and they said that Nicolas Cage was the star. And Scorsese himself agreed that he had made it and kind of got in on the joke. So this is what we're talking about, lots of kinds of examples. So Mark Marino and I do projects kind of on purpose. We take that impulse that so many people have and use our literary backgrounds to see what kinds of things could be done with it. So just very quick examples of the kinds of projects we've done. This is a great thing to do with friends. It's called 1 Week No Tech. And this is where you pretend to go without all your technology for a week. And then you get in social media and complain like crazy about how you miss your phone and you miss doing so. So here's me getting away from my phone and getting out into nature. And that can be in all sorts of different platforms. Essentially, we consider ourselves to be cuckoo birds of technology. We lay our eggs in other people's nests. We use whatever current technology people are using in everyday life to do regular communications, and we build these fictions in them. Another quick example, we got a bunch of people together and had them create, this is when you could do this in Twitter, create a new Twitter account for their high school self. Here is me at high school age, and they often would put a picture of themselves from high school, and then we all pretended to go to high school again together for a month. And the thing I love about this project is you'd explain that concept to people and they'd laugh and smile, and then this dark look came over their face as they remembered what it really is like to be an adolescent and what it was like to be in high school. The most recent, one of the most recent Netprovs we've done is a thing called processing, where it's based on the concept that we are the secret human helpers who give artificial intelligence programs the courage to face the day. We're the ones who hear Siri's and Alexa's tearful doubts and try to guide them in their stormy and complex rivalry. We're the ones called on to help ChatGPT work through imposter syndrome. So we pretend that we're the confidants and helpers of these kind of divas, the famous divas of artificial intelligence. And I think of Netprov as being this wonderful form that's still coalescing, that is drawn from impulses from all these different backgrounds, and people come to it from their various experiences and bring all sorts of traditions from these different fields, which I think is absolutely wonderful. As Scott mentioned, if you're interested in it, there's a book. It's available online from Amherst College Press that tells more about Netprov. But let's get on to the one that we're doing. And I will tell you, you might want to begin getting Discord up if you don't have it, and that there is a Discord channel. I'll put it on the screen a little bit later. But if you want to jump in there, you can. It's called Electronic Literature International, and that's where we're going to be playing together today and for the next 2 or 3 weeks. One of the things that Mark Marino and I have discovered about Netprov is that we can declare a date when we think a Netprov is over, because we have to get back to other things and we no longer have that much time for it. But Netprovs have their own lives, and if people are still into the characters they've created and the fun that they're having writing the fiction together, they just go as long as they go. So do check back in the coming days if this interests you, and you can play at any time. That one of our golden principles for Netprov is Netprov means never having to say you're sorry. So people always say, oh, I didn't have much time. It's like some Netprov is better than no Netprov. So there's been amazing panels as part of this fantastic project of Daniela's. And we're, as Jason said, we are in this group kind of trying to look at things from a different optic, from the point of view of everyday people. And we're using, as an example, fictional people to try out, to experiment with ways that people might react to such a message. So I have a Calvino quote that I love that to use as a kind of a epigraph for this Netprov, where Calvino says, if a new world were discovered today, would we be able to see it? Would we be able to clear from our minds the images we habitually associate with our expectations of a different world, those of science fiction, for example, to grasp the real difference that lay before our eyes? And in that quest, I want to again really express my gratitude and appreciation and admiration for this project. And in particular, Willie Lempert's presentation as part of these workshops. If you haven't seen it, go to YouTube, because it's fantastic. And it's really, it is the sort of the first impulse I had as I started to get my mind around this project was, I need to learn from indigenous peoples and indigenous scholars about, how to not make the same colonial mistakes. again. And Willie's work addresses that beautifully. And he uses an example that I love. This is a map that was collected by Captain Cook's expedition to the South Pacific, but drawn by a master navigator who was a Pacific Islander, and was sort of dismissed for a couple centuries, and now in these recent years has been recognized as a work of cartographic genius. It does not use the projection lines, latitude and longitude, as Western maps does, but it's packed with information, and it works in a different way. So just as Natalia and Jason are doing in their mapping project, this is a great starting point. So how would everyday people be impacted by the message? And in order to do this, you're going to create a character. And in a second, I'll talk just a little bit more about some tips about creating that character. To try out ideas. It's one of the great things of fiction, is that it allows you to test ideas without necessarily having to have them forever attached to your name as a serious thing, because no deep ideas come fully created from the mind of the creator in an instant. Things are developed over time. They're developed through collaboration, and this models that process. So since we're in Discord, we imagine a Discord community of people who are just sharing their everyday experience. And if your characters can develop, that's the beauty of Netprovs that go over several days. You can set up some effects and come back in and say, I tried this and it didn't work, but here's what I'm doing now. It allows you to do these posts that, again, resemble the kinds of things that go on in your own social media feeds and your own message groups. So here's quick instructions about how to play. When playing Netprov, we love each other and take good care of each other. It's a safe, creative space. So you want to create a character that can be a lot like you or not very much like you. And one of our big tips is that if you're going to create a satirical character, which is part of the tradition of Commedia dell'arte and many Netprovs that we do and the ones that are out there, remember to punch up, as they say in improv, and not down, which is to say you satirize in general people have higher status and privilege than you rather than lower. This is sort of an important thing technically on the Discord. I'd like everybody, if you would, to start your posts with from character name. And that, again, is a signal if people see you. If you're a big Discord user, then people, if they see these things, they'll know that it's not you being you, but it's you being the character. And this is a hard-won knowledge. I always forget the characters that I'm playing with. And so if I use multiple ones, I make a list, a paper list that I keep beside the computer to remind me who's who. So you post their evolving reaction. And if you love silliness, like we do, Mark and I love, one of the things that we've try to do ourselves is to start kind of slow and naturalistic and get a little bit more silly. Remember, you can kind of save the payoff for a little bit later. Here's the tip or the principle that is one of the most beautiful, and it's one that that concentrates on reading other people's posts. And that is, we're going to encourage everybody to have each of your posts contain a 3-word or more phrase from somebody else's post. And what this does is that makes this amazing kind of weave, this musicality to it when you read it all together, and there are people echoing it. And the other thing I like about it is that I think it reflects the kind of conceptual design of the whole project in terms of message and answer, call and response, so that we're kind of interweaving our posts. How to be a good supportive Netprov player, where you support other players. So just use all the things that Discord can do, smiles and likes. But principally, if someone's got a fictional idea that you like, and you go, oh, that was a great idea, play with them. Have your character join that character's joke or the imaginary reality that they're creating, and join them in that for a while. And what we like to encourage people is, like, even if you have an idea of who your character is and kind of what reality about the message that they're creating. Don't worry if your character joins other characters' realities for a short period, because you know, our real life is full of multiple realities.
I wanted to say real quickly that in the chat, the link to the Discord has been shared. And one of the things we could do is while Rob is finishing giving us the scenario, we could all get in and start.
You're welcome to jump in. So again, just what are we talking about? What do we mean by kind of character examples? And you know, Jason was talking, he's had some really cool ideas, and these are just some things to help get you started. So I have a character that you'll see there in the Discord that I just seized on the message as a message, or as a sort of a social media post. And I have a character who's going to get very concerned about how many likes and subscribers the ETI is going to get, and you know, is it going to eclipse their own social media fame? So there's somebody like that. Somebody might say, you know, I figured out the end of the message and it says, oops, I'm sorry, I hit reply all by mistake. In other words, I love this idea that the message may have a targeted user, and that we may not be it. The message may not be intended for us, and it may be accidental that we are getting it. Does this influence relationships in my astrological chart because I have a big date? You know, is this going to make my rent go up? And just, you know, as Jason was saying too earlier, everyday concerns. One last example, how to speculate without, as Calvino encourages us to do, without necessarily turning to science fiction as our first source. Well, there are other kinds of frameworks that exist in our culture for such events. And one of them would be developmental psychology. And with your indulgence, again, I encourage everybody at this point, get into the Discord, start writing, and you can just be listening to this in the background. But here's just an example that I'm going to be posting shortly from a character. What did I decide to call him? My character is called Sage Advice with a Copyright. So it's sort of an advice seller. But this is a sequence, the beginning of a sequence called Preparing Humans for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, based on developmental psychology. The big announcement: don't wait to tell the humans. Even though times are tumultuous, stay calm and level. Help them understand that there is someone else out there. They probably will ask, where are they? And expect a literal answer. Point to the night sky and say, they're in the universe's belly, same as where you came from. Let them touch the data. Look together at images of when they themselves were just evolving. What a cute biped you are. Look at you striding. Look at you eating that tuber. Be prepared for any reaction. No matter how humans react, reassure them that our planet built them, supports them, and still loves them, as far as we know. Let the human be the star. They're going to be worried that all the attention is going to the newcomers. When decoding messages or speculating on the nature of the beings, focus on the human's reaction and reassure them that they're still important. Give them a doll. Giving them a doll will help you explain everything they need to know about relating to the ETI. So again, you see the basic idea, which is that there is a lot of wisdom about how to prepare a young child for the arrival of a new, younger child, and the traditional fears. And there's a lot of parallels between that. Like, you know, human beings are maybe not so special anymore. And, you know, is the attention going to go to some other beings and that kind of thing. So that's an example of the kinds of things that you might want to play with. So let's just jump in and start to play. And I'm going to remind and encourage both the featured players, are my electronic literature friends, and but all of you, of a very fun principle of doing Netprov live together, which I highly recommend. Like, how many people out there, just quick, just a digital hand or a real hand, how many people have sort of game nights or do Dungeons and Dragons or things like that? So this is something, one of the beauties of Netprov is it works asynchronously, so you can do it at any time and you just kind of check back whenever it's available. But it's a really fun thing to do in person or even on Zoom together at the same time. And what I encourage people to do is quickly, if you read something that you think is smart, funny, that you like, just open your microphone and read it out loud. So I love what I'm seeing some things in there.
Bleaching is the sun. The sun is the center. The center is not the center. It is only a dot. That dot is a signal. That signal is as murky as hollowed sand.
Beautiful. That is beautiful. Some people have such massive networks in their contacts connected to everyone. And now a message from space makes it all look so puny. I love that idea.
Maybe those fishes aren't dead. They're just waiting for creatures from other worlds. Their DNA connected via comets.
Oh, I like that. Wow. That's a nice way of, I like that sense of connection. I mean, again, I really applaud the really smart, interesting way that this project's been put together, and the other workshops. And again, if you haven't seen them, but just these reminders that for many, and again, Willie Lempert would say, I believe, probably most historically, most human cultures have had a sense of space being populated. And that he makes the point that it's a really an outlier opinion. It's very unusual. The idea of empty space is a very unusual concept in human history.
From Winnie Pooch. Hey, woof! I just arrived in the Rainbow Bridge Meadow. Miss my people, but lots of woofers here. So many stars for now. I'm waiting for creatures from other worlds to join me.
I love this exchange about there's a encouragement that the ETs might like chocolate. Excellent. Good for you. Good for you for jumping in and playing. More play, more play. And I just with my scholarly hat on for a moment, just to kind of follow up on some of the preliminary remarks at the very beginning that Scott was making, one of the things that you can see that is not a universal characteristic of electronic literature, but it's a common characteristic, is that compared with literary infrastructure of kind of laborious typesetting and printing and shipping books and book selling, which made for a communication pattern that was all pretty much one way, like just I'm going to say this and share it. The immediacy and the back and forth, the way that electronic digital media and particularly social media have been developed for back and forth, means that it changes this relationship between author and reader, and there is basically no longer a distinction. And Mark Marino and I just like to call people who play Netprovs players, and we like that term because it echoes both the world of games and traditionally the world of theater. In Shakespeare's time, actors were called players. Oh, these are great. Good for you. Good for you. You're doing good. Yeah, from Melting Pot. I wonder if ETs eat, do all the life forms necessarily eat and sleep. I love that. I love that. That's inspiring me. I'll post my little sequence that I'm gonna post about the kind of preparing for the kids. I'll build off of that idea and Fedna's idea and do an eating thing, because maybe human beings can kind of show the newcomers what eating is.
Everyone hop on into this. Don't be shy. If you're stuck thinking about a character, just imagine yourself or an exaggerated version of yourself and start typing. There's no shame involved here. Nothing profound needs to come out.
No, that is really the beauty of fiction. It's a way for trying, it's a safe place to try things out.
Hey, Rob.
Yes.
How long would this stay up?
Basically, we were thinking of I'm going to try to play for 2-3 weeks if people are playing. So it's going to be up. Tell your friends, have people come and visit.
Because we were thinking too about the images that we mentioned earlier. This is in the chat somewhere. I was estimating maybe a month is a good amount of time if people want to play around with that, and then send us something at that email address. And around a month. I mean, it's not a hard and fast deadline, but that's probably I think it's a good amount of time to explore the idea and to make something and send us. If you can send it sooner, great. You send it a month, great. Send it 2 months, well, we'll probably still be interested. But a month is probably a good idea. But so this Discord will be going for a while. So you all could invite other people and continue this conversation, you think, for the next month or a few weeks?
Yeah, I mean, as long, like I said, that it's Mark and I have learned from experience that we don't really have the power to declare a Netprov over. If people keep wanting to play, they're going to play. But yeah, it would be fun to because of the series of events around A Sign in Space. It would be great to kind of concentrate it. So, in the next week would be great. But again, it's very low. Not many requirements in these. I love this food theme that's coming up, and there's let me see if I can retrace it here. Yeah, I had a sudden urge to for a new form of pastry that Ms. Miniver says they have it in the oven right now, and then from Melting Pot says that they're not a newcomer, but they're dying to know about the new pastry. And this is, I think this is absolutely beautiful. From Thinker One, we were talking about the target of the message, because maybe the message is not intended for us, but I love this. What if the message was for me? What if I can't decode it? What will I miss? And I love that idea that the message is for one person. And again, that opens possibilities, like it might be for one person who is long gone. And what is our responsibility?
Hey, everyone, I'm just putting a note in the chat. If you do want to, if you're not, a lot of people like Discord, some people don't. So if you want to, you can actually email the SETI digital narrative Gmail address now without any images or anything, just a short note to say, hey, I'll be sending you something eventually, or just a short note to say anything. And then I can email you and remind you later on if you want. So that's an easy way of doing it as well. So it's up to you, really. But yeah, if you don't know what to do yet, but you just want to make sure you're in the loop, you could just email it now quickly, and then we'll send you a reminder in a couple of weeks.
That's great. And again, for those of you who have not journeyed yet in the wonderful lands of electronic literature, this kind of collaboration where there is this map, this wonderful interactive map project that's kind of side by side with a Netprov, a character-based Netprov. Those electronic, again, one of the discoveries, Scott talks a lot about this in his book, is that they're often take place in different platforms simultaneously. It's not just, a single thing, a movie, a book, that kind of thing. But it's very typical of Netprovs that they wander into these, have these parallel tracks.
Hey, logistics question here. So I see some people are using the reply feature Do you like that? Do you want to stay away from that?
I
Does
think
it make
I think it works fine. Yeah, it makes it explicit because again, the Discord is set up to track the likes from your real username, your Discord username. But I like the sense that it helps make it clear that you're relating characters to other characters. Because again, that's one of the things with Netprov. We want to be, especially in the current climate, the current media climate in the United States, we try to be really clear that this is a fiction. You know, earlier on in a gentler social media world, we would do projects that were a little bit harder to tell if it was a fiction, and searching for that payoff when people realize, oh wow, this is a fiction. But we try to be really clear. So that's a good question, but that helps with that.
cool? Yeah.
Great. And just before, I know we're kind of coming to our time, but I just want to take this opportunity again to thank Daniela for this wonderful project and just to commend the scope of it and the variety and depth of the people that you have involved in. It's just fantastic. Really, really nice work.
Thank you, Rob. Thanks, everyone. I just want to say that we should make, if you haven't done yet, we should make an announcement in the interpretation chat about this new thread that you created on Discord, so that people can migrate from one chat to the other, and just bring the more technical people in the electronic literature and vice versa. Ideally, it would be great to see that kind of like just sharing of mindsets, I would say, not just ideas, but methodologies, and I'm sure will be great. So
great. That's wonderful. Yeah,
Thank you, Daniela.
If we have a hope of understanding a message at all, it has to be interdisciplinary, right? It's like, I love this, that there's now here's what I would consider one of my favorite interpretations of the data in the form of a American sweet pie.
Well, I want to say hi to Utsav. Utsav has been attending all workshops. It's fantastic. You really very one of the greatest supporter of the project. Thanks, Utsav, from India, if I'm correct.
Thank you.
Fantastic. And I did want, hi, Utsav. I did want to say that the great thing about these Netprovs that Rob has emphasized, I think, is that what we're doing here right now, what we've done here today, is meant to be this sort of seed, and it's meant to progress and continue on. And I also wanted to mention that at the Center for Digital Narrative, one of the things that we're going to be doing are exhibitions that feature interpretations of different aspects of society through electronic literature and digital media art. And I'm hoping that Daniela and we can get together and eventually create some kind of an exhibition around the Assign in Space project. And we're gonna hope to involve more artists and more writers. And one of the things that I think is really special about Netprov is that it shows that really anyone can be an electronic literature author. We all have ideas, and we all engage with computers on a daily basis, and we all sort of speak into these holes in space in a way to communicate with each other, especially after sort of the pandemic. If you think about how much these technologies became embedded into our lives. So like Rob said, we're all enmeshed in these networks, and we're all creative in these networks. So I hope that you'll sort of spread the word about this Netprov and about the MAP project to your friends, and invite people in, and let's see what we can do together with this story, with all its multiple threads that are evolving, and will continue to evolve as the collective story that we're telling together about our interpretation of how we might respond to the signal continues. So I think that's our scheduled time. People can, of course, continue on in the Netprov or, go away and come back to it, come up with an idea and type it in tomorrow morning. But so please join in on this, and thanks again. This is a wonderful project, and has certainly caused all of us to think in a kind of concrete way about these first moments that we'll face, and the questions we'll ask about ourselves when we do receive these signals over these telescopes or some other sort of communication from the life that definitely does statistically almost certainly exist out there in the universe. So thanks a lot, and I think I'll take off for now. And thanks to all of you who joined us from different parts of the world in our sort of temporary autonomous zone. All right, good night.